what did you learn anything from this game?
I learned about the upside of the Boston Celtics. I learned that Jason Tatum came out of his slump. Since All-Star game where he dropped 55 points, 55 points, made 10 threes in the All-Star game. Homie's been shooting 29% from the three-point line since. He has been in a major funk behind the arc, right? There's a reason why his name has fallen out of the MVP conversation, and you've had names like, Joker, you've had Joel Embiid, you've had Giannis that have ascended. You've almost forgotten that Jason Tatum, before All-Star break, was in the conversation, right? Wendy yesterday in First Take told me that he will be in fourth. He is slotted to be in fourth in that conversation. But I think last night, him making 8+ threes and shooting the ball as well as he did, that's a great sign for the Celtics moving forward, because right now, Chris Canty, it's about fighting for the number 1 seed. The Celtics are 2 games behind the Bucks for the number 1 seed with 6 games left to go in the regular season. And when you think about the way these matchups may go as it relates to pairing in the playoffs, the Celtics right now, if they were still to be number 2 seed, they would have to go against the Heat in the first round. Dude, no team wants to see Jimmy Butler and these dogs in the first round. Now, the Celtics will still be favored, but you're coming out that series, man, with scratch marks on your arms, claw marks, you're bleedy, you're bloody, all that stuff, right? You're bleedy. I just made up a word in the morning. Bleedy, bloody. You know what I mean? So if you think about this. If you were the Celtics in the 2nd seed, you go against the Heat in the first round, and then you're going against Philly in the Eastern Conference semifinals to inevitably get to the Bucks with the number 1 seed, that's a hell of a path.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jay, what we saw last night was twofold. Number one, it's about the Boston Celtics sending a message to the Milwaukee Bucks. Like, we see you at the top of the Eastern Conference standings, but make no mistake about it, on any given night, we can come in here and we can whoop up on you. And if you look at the 3 games that these 2 teams have played in the regular season, Boston has been on the right side of 2 of them. And the one that they lost, Milwaukee was at home, and it went into overtime. So at some point, that starts to creep into your mind as a team, and you just wonder exactly where the Milwaukee Bucks are at. I keep saying this is a different team from when they won the title. They had Chris Middleton. He was a guy that you could rely on to go for 20 on any given night. He could also explode for 30 or 40 plus, but he's not the same player, even though he's had 2 30-point performances in March. He's just not. All you have to do is watch the games. You can tell his impact and toward this team winning is not the same. The other thing that's a big concern for the Milwaukee Bucks, where's the DJ? Where's the D? I mean, back-to-back nights, you let one team score 139, the other team score 140. That ain't going to get it done. So you do have to have some concern about the Milwaukee Bucks. Drew Holiday has been great. Giannis has been great. But the supporting cast is just not as good as the one that they had when they won a championship.
Tired,
and that's
though,
my
Chris.
concern. That's my concern once they get to the 2nd season.
I hear you, but to me, I don't think you learn anything from a game like this. I mean, Jay, I hear what you're saying about Tatum, and it's funny in the NBA, in the modern NBA. Like, remember when Julius Randle had the breakout year a couple years ago for the Knicks? Oh my God, he did it! He was just shooting and making a lot more threes. And that was it. Otherwise, his game was the same. He got hot from outside. So Tatum gets cold from outside, and all of a sudden he falls off. But that's gonna, as they say, regress to the mean. Tatum's not gonna be a bad shooter because he's a good shooter. But that's good if he gets going, right? And what you said about the standings certainly is going to have a huge effect on stuff. It should. But, man, the NBA, I don't know why they have back-to-backs, but when a team has a real tight schedule like the Bucks did, Chris, I hear what you're saying about defense. It's just like they're tired, man. They're tired. They're just tired.
Max, you coming up with a lot of excuses.
It's not just one excuse. They're just tired.
You're coming up with a lot of excuses, dog.
So, Chris, here's the hard part, and I hear what you're saying about the defense in the last 2 games, but since January 23rd, man, they're 25-5.
Yeah.
Like, they've been on such a tear in the league, in that span of time. That's how they got the number 1 overall seed. Boston slid, and then Milwaukee went on this rip. They started tearing teams apart. So they've been playing at a really, really high level. Like I said, the last several games of the regular season will ultimately determine the standings. And there are certain teams, like, I do not want to see the Miami Heat in the first round.
Yeah.
Like, so if you're Boston, you're trying everything you can do in your willpower to say, hey, we have to find a way to make up these 2 games to get that number 1 seed. And we're hoping that Milwaukee, like you're saying, Chris, in these last 2 games, giving up 125-plus points. We hope that you are tired down the stretch, so we find a way to sneak that number one.
By the way, I said 5 out of 6. I knew there was something wrong with that. How's that? It's 5 out of 7. But still, it's basically you're playing almost every night for a week straight. But and in the playoffs, you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, but here's what I'll say, Max. I mean, stacking a lot of regular season wins, that's great. You want to have the best record. You want to have the number 1 overall seed. But the one thing that I will say to that is that you have to play a certain style of basketball to have success in the postseason. And, Jay, you can speak to this more than anybody. It's one thing to have a great regular season record, but are your dominant traits as a team going to translate to a style of play that's going to make you a tough out once you get to the postseason? I get it. They've got a great record. They've stacked a lot of wins. This team has championship DNA. I don't think this team is as good as a team that won a championship a couple of years ago, thereby being a little more vulnerable than more people want to acknowledge.
Kevin Durant spoke about his legacy to The Athletic. Listen to this quote. I don't care about legacy. I used to want to carve out a lane or space in this game for myself that people can remember, but it's become too much of a thing now. It just becomes too much of a focus on other people. What he's done, what's he done, comparisons. Before he wasn't doing all this, when we wasn't doing all this debating, I cared about it. I'm about to be in the same breath as these top guys. It was big. Nowadays, I truly, truly don't care. I truly, said a lot of trulies just then, just want to go out there and produce, be the best that I could be, go home, hang with my family. That's it. Now, KD is, on the team that's favored to come out of the West right now. Once I left to go to the Warriors in 2016, I figured any logical thing when it comes to me, it's out of the window. When it comes to me, people are not going to think in a logical way or simply look what I've done and say that's it. They got to add a narrative to it. They got to push something to discredit me.
Max?
What?
Go ahead.
Once I left to go to the Warriors, it's been the gymnastics on how to discredit me every step of the way. It's like, damn, that's not even fun no more, like engaging with people because y'all aren't even being truthful. You move the goalpost every time. You expect the most out of me, and if I don't reach it, I'm a failure. It's like, what's the problem? Jay, it sounds like you're buying some of what he's selling.
Man, play the world's smallest violin for KD, man. Stop
the
yourself.
World's smallest violin, yeah.
Dear
What's that,
God.
Jay?
Go ahead, Chris.
No, here's the thing. He's talking about not caring about his legacy. That's easy to say after the experiment that was the Brooklyn Nets failed miserably. Like, you are the face of that. If you didn't care about your legacy, why would you leave an ideal basketball situation with the Golden State Warriors to go do your own thing in Brooklyn? You know why you did? Because you wanted to silence all of the critics that criticized you for joining a ready-made title contender. And so you decided, you know what? I'm going to go do my own thing in Brooklyn. I'm going to be the focal point, go get Kyrie to come run with me. We're going to handpick the coach, which they did, and we're going to win championships here, and nobody can do anything to discredit me. You can't do all of those things and then come out of the side of your neck and say, well, yeah, I don't really care about how my legacy is perceived or how I'm revered. That doesn't matter to me. Of course it does, and it should, because of everything that you put in to be as great as you are.
Yeah. You know what, though, Chris? Like, so I look at this a little bit differently. I think there was a moment in time where Kevin Durant really did care what everybody else had to say. I think that's why he left Golden State. Because you know that old line, Chris, when you try to please everybody, what do? You please no one, right?
Exactly.
And I think at the end of the day, regardless of whatever, media stuff that goes viral is typically negative. So when, and as athletes, you're naturally built not to hear the positive. Your ears peak when you hear the negative because that typically motivates you. So the combination of both those things for Kevin Durant, I think it was what he was talking about.
Yeah, but let's look at...
Hold on, let me finish.
Yeah,
I'm just going to say that I think at that moment now, if you're KD, it's more so about, that stuff will figure itself out when my body of work is done. So regardless of whatever people want to say now, I have to turn that off in order for me just to focus on what's in front of me because all that other stuff was a distraction, and I allowed it to influence me. I actually give him credit if this is what it really is. I hope it's what it really is.
So here's the thing about here's the thing about KD, guys. Chris, of course, he's trying to have it both ways, right? Because clearly he leaves and goes to the Warriors. And as you said, it's not just a ready-made title contender. It's a 73-win team that already won a championship and came within a possession of going back-to-back and only didn't because it was one of the greatest players ever.
LeBron,
greatest moment, right? Greatest moment, and he was screwed up too. And they just by the skin of their teeth didn't win at home in Game 7. You add an MVP caliber player to that team, any MVP caliber player, there's no way they can lose, and that's what happened. So he didn't get full credit for the championships from people like me, not because it didn't show the thing you really want to see, which is, can you lead a contender? Not a team that's where they can't lose, but a contender. Can you beat out LeBron when the playing field is even? That kind of stuff. So he goes to Brooklyn, ostensibly, one would think, to show that. Look, I can make my own thing. It didn't work out. Okay. Now he's on Phoenix. But here's the thing about KD. Phoenix is, Chris, a ready-made contender. They were in the finals last year. They have an established thing. They have good players, but great
Not
players.
last year.
But it's not like the 73-win Warriors. People like me will actually give KD a lot of credit if he chips up this year. So when I hear him say this before the playoffs, it sounds a little bit like he's giving himself a soft place to land in case they don't win. That's what it feels like to me.
So you feel like he's
Well,
making
Max,
an
that's
excuse?
Max, that's a you problem.
Yeah,
Because I'm not going to discredit anybody that wins championships and gets a finals MVP.
Two finals MVP, Chris.
It's not
yeah,
two
dis-
finals
it's
MVP.
not discrediting.
I'm not going to do that.
It's
I know
not
how hard it is to
discrediting.
win a championship. No, but I know how hard it is to win a championship, and that's essentially what you're saying drove KD to go to Brooklyn. Because he wasn't going to get the credit that he deserves for winning the 2 chips out in Golden State.
Wait a minute.
I disagree with that. But what it sounds like from KD's comments is that it's an admission that those things influenced him to make a bad basketball decision.
Guys,
Chris,
And
that's
so
right.
that may well be the case, but I don't want to really hear that from Kevin Durant because of how disastrous it was in Brooklyn.
But
like you care about your legacy. So let's not
discredit-
start fronting like you didn't.
Discredit is the wrong word because he gets credit for it. Does he get as much credit as someone else who did something on a team that wasn't guaranteed to win?
That's semantics, Max.
That joined that team, stopped him in Game 7. I was there at Golden State, stopped him from advancing to a title. He then joined them, and it was a juggernaut team. So it's not that he gets credit taken away. He did. He won a championship. He played really well in both those series. But he doesn't get as much credit, for example, as LeBron James winning a championship against that Golden State team when he didn't have an advantage that was insurmountable. Of course not. It's not, you don't take credit away from KD, but that's why what he's doing now adds more credit. Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.